Welcome to another episode of Communication Corner. I'm your host, Gail Lewis, and tonight we're going to be talking about communication between countries. Picture it. Many of us here in Queens are either from another place ourselves or our parents are from somewhere else. Now think about it. What if you had lived right here in Queens for 20, 30, 40 years of your life, and after building a family, going to school here, having all of your friends around you, buying a home even, what if you had really settled right here in Queens and then one day you were told to return to your country of origin? How would you feel? Displaced, to say the least. Well, something like that is happening right now in the Dominican Republic. Haitian nationals are being forced to leave the Dominican Republic and return to their country of origin, Haiti. Many after living in the Dominican Republic for generations. So tonight, here on Communication Corner, we're going to discuss the Dominican-Haitian crisis, or what could be a really huge civil rights crisis. And with me on Communication Corner tonight to discuss this civil rights crisis are two people who are no strangers to Communication Corner. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
Good evening, Gail.
Starting from my left, Elsy Mecklembourg-Guibert. I always kill your name. I'm so sorry, Elsy. We'll just say Elsy from here on out.
That's fine.
From EMG Health Communications, you're a health communicator. And also Joseph Marthone, community activist, also a candidate for an office here or there.
Yes, U.S. Congress.
Right now, U.S. Congress in the 5th Congressional District.
Yes.
So welcome, Elsy. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for making a repeat appearance for both of you here on Communication Corner. When I was thinking about shining the Communication Corner light on the situation in Haiti / the Dominican Republic, the two of you are two people who came to mind because you guys pretty much have your pulse on the Haitian forearm. You really know what's going on with Haitians, both in Haiti and of course here in the United States. So I'm really excited to have you here to discuss this tonight. So let's start with a little background. The island that Haiti and the Dominican Republic share is Hispaniola, yes?
Yes.
Can you speak to a little bit of history of how these two nations came to live on one island?
Okay. We started back, let's say, we're going to take you back into the 15th century in 1492 when Christopher Columbus made that superb trip to the New World and discovered many, many countries, and along the way, Hispaniola, the country that he called Hispaniola.
And then it was one country.
It was one island, 1492. And many, further down the road, there were many wars. The Indians that were found there, the Indians were the population was totally decimated, because actually when we look at, in retrospect, when we look at history, we found out that the team, the Columbus, the Spanish team, were just a bunch of bums. They were bandits. They were murderers.
Which is kind of ironic when you consider that we celebrate Christopher Columbus in this country.
Absolutely, absolutely. When I studied in school, I thought he was the greatest hero. I'm sorry,
the greatest hero, right?
And but when you look at history and you research, you find out that the people were just there for their own interest. And when they realized that they had taken all of the gold and all of the resources of the country, all they had to do is to eliminate the people that could potentially make resistance. And that happened, and then after that they needed more manpower to continue working and to continue
harvesting all of the natural resources.
Exactly,
right.
And they went, now that we happen to have further down the road, we had the transatlantic slave and
trade,
that slave trade, and then now they brought the Africans to the islands, also to other parts of the world as well. And,
to America, to other Caribbean islands as well, yes.
Right, right. And luckily, one of these days I will come on stage to talk about a very, very prominent project that is taking place in Nantes, France, where they were. That's where the place where they were building the boats that will go to Africa.
Slave boats, the slave trade boats.
And we're very much involved, and we have formed an alliance, USA Haiti, to help the people in not conceive their project. But this will be
that's
the
a whole
chapter
other
of
show.
another,
We'll
the whole
definitely do
other
that.
show.
But back to the civil rights crisis. So in 1492, we had Columbus, and then we had the transatlantic slave trade, right?
Right, and the slavery that took place for many, many years until we had the powers to be that decided no, enough was enough, so we needed to have our liberation of freedom. So they fought hard, and you've heard so many names in the Haitian history, just like Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Toussaint Louverture, Henri Christophe, Alexandre Pétion. They were from different calibers, and they all stood together. That was a unity, and I like Joe when he says, l'union fait la force, in unity we stand. So that was a really a hallmark of unity. In unity we stand. All four of them and many more stood together and fought the colonialists. Right. And ultimately they won the war. But prior to that, in 1801, 3 years before the independence, Toussaint Louverture was given the entire island to govern, because Spain has relinquished the east part of the island to France. Right. So France was dominating in the western part of the island,
which is now Haiti.
Which is now Haiti. So Toussaint Louverture took over the entire island in 1801. In 1805, after the independence, Dessalines now continued to maintain unity of the island, and that was the right thing to do, because there was a risk that the masters will come back and take over the land. So he really wanted to maintain unity of the island. So that was no problem. I mean, it was just one country.
Right, and that was 1805.
1805.
Right.
In 1822, we had a president, Mr. Boyer, Jean-Pierre Boyer, who governed the island for 25 years. I mean, history is part of myself. I mean, I love to talk about that, especially when the facts talk so eminently about what had happened and how to comprehend what is happening right now in 2014. So Mr. Boyer governed the island for 25 whole years, and he was given the key by the then mayor, Mr. Cáceres, Núñez Cáceres, that gave him the key to come into the country and continue to govern the entire country. So that was no problem at that time. But again, put that aside, that we as a Haitian president for 25 years, he was in charge of the entire island, Haitian and Dominican.
Yes.
Okay. In 1861 now, we had, they wanted to have the independence from Spain. The Dominican wanted to have the independence from Spain. Another president, Mr. Giffard, Nicolas Giffard, helped the Dominican revolutionaries fight the war against Spain, because Spain wanted to get back to that part of the island.
Of course, because it had riches, it had natural resources. Absolutely.
So Mr. Boyer, Mr. Giffard, I'm sorry, Nicolas Giffard, helped the Dominican in ammunition, in manpower, in resources, in material to fight the Spaniard, and that helped them. And all along the way, in the early 20th century, the 19th century rather, Haiti always helped other countries. Of course, Haiti had a bad label of instigating revolution.
Right.
And that's why we always are in the spotlight, because we're always instigators.
But in a good way.
Good way. There may have been some disarray.
Yes,
And,
I like that term.
I don't know if you want to interject, because I probably have said too much, but basically this is what happened from the beginning of what we know about history, from the 15th century up until the 19th century. What can you say about that?
And then what happened with Haiti becoming an independent?
In 1804.
Okay.
In 1804.
Well, after what Elsy has very eloquently communicated, is that we had a situation where after the Spanish side of the island, as we're speaking, had won its independence from Haiti, there was some going back and forth.
Had won its independence from Spain.
Well, after they won their independence from Spain, then, but they were only able to do that with
the
Haitian,
assistance, obviously.
Yeah, with the assistance of Haiti. And the Haitians at that time considered themselves liberators. So they went to the other side of the island to fight on behalf of their brothers, their cousins, who were fighting against Spain. And later on, the Dominicans or the Spaniards on that side of the island, they fought to have themselves liberated from Haiti.
Right.
So it went from being Hispaniola to then being Haiti and Dominican Republic. Most Haitians refer to Dominican Republic as Saint-Domingue. There was some going back and forth, but in the early days after they had won their independence, as a matter of fact, the first 4 presidents, if I'm not mistaken, were actually men of Haitian descent or Haitians themselves that were president of the Dominican Republic.
And that's also because at that point there had been that long tradition of strong leaders coming out of Haiti.
Of Haiti,
right?
absolutely, absolutely.
And we were one nation, as a matter of fact, and this is true. We had about 4 Dominican president of Haitian descent, and the latest one would have been, had he won, Peña Gomez, who has his mother as being a Haitian-born citizen.
Yeah, he lost to Medina.
Right.
Yeah.
That was back in 2007.
And so there has been some struggles over the years, back and forth, between then the Dominican side and the Haitian side of the
Struggles, how do you mean?
Struggles, I believe, that are based on 3 basic evils.
Okay.
If I could offer this. And these
they're
evils,
not sex, drugs, and rock and roll. They are.
they're not. And there are some people out there who would not say that those things are evil. But these evils, I think, is in part, or small or large, is what translates to the situation that we have today. And we're talking about racism.
So racism is one.
Yeah, we're talking about elements of greed and pure economics.
Right.
And we're talking about political empowerment.
So race, money, and political empowerment.
Yes.
These seem to be 3 themes that come up a lot in the world.
yes, they do. Yes,
so
they do.
Explain how those 3 tenets come into play here.
Well, they come into play in this century, where we have a situation in DR where they are in great need of migrant workers to work in the fields, to work the farms, and to also, from what I understand, do some construction work as well.
So there's that need for cheap labor.
Absolutely.
In the DR,
yes.
right?
And with the turmoil that has taken place in Haiti, particularly political, over X number of generations, you have many individuals that have migrated over to DR simply to look for work while there was political instability in Haiti.
Which makes sense and goes on in a lot of parts of the world.
Yeah, which goes on today. People travel to the U.S., Americans travel to other places in order for them to be able to find work.
Right.
And so with that, what we find is that with these individuals who had traveled over to the Dominican Republic, and this has been going on for centuries, we find that there is some element of resentment, a great deal of racism, and the desire to keep those of Haitian descent from elevating themselves in Dominican society.
So, and for people who may not be familiar, you mentioned racism. Why would that be a factor? What are the races involved here?
Well, one of the things that is very clear, particularly in the Dominican Republic, is that the Hispaniola cousins who are on the Dominican Republic side tend to be of lighter or fairer skin.
Okay, so they look more Caucasian.
More Caucasian, more European, while we have those from the Haitian side, the Haiti side, that tend to be of darker hue. And so,
So more African.
more African, absolutely. And so,
And I see this, and you see this a lot in the world, in other places as well. Yes.
Absolutely. There's been a surge of Spanish people, from Spaniard coming into the island. And it was one of the anecdote was that they sent in for more Spaniard to lighten the population. And this is probably where the racism theory comes from, because now they feel that they are not even Dominican, they are Spaniard from Europe. And one of the elements that I wanted to add to the 3 tiers that you mentioned before was the territorial influence. Remember that the country was unified at one point, so Dominican, the Spanish, the Dominican, then they own lands. They had their own lands. And now with what came up for years, even before Papa Doc, you're talking about the 1930s under different government, they allowed the migrant to go to Dominican Republic for the sugarcane industry. So they settled down, and they settled down, and they had their little land there. So there is also the element of fighting to get back more land. In addition to being politicized, economic, and racist. There is also that element of territorial power that the Dominican has in mind. He wants to grab more lands, because by removing, especially when we're going to come to the migration issue, by removing those people from their land, what's going to happen? That will be theirs. That will be theirs.
Well, see, I believe that's part of the economic.
The 3 rings you were talking about, one of them was economic.
Economic, because right now, as it stands, individuals of Haitian descent technically are not allowed to own land.
In the Dominican Republic.
Any quote-unquote pure Dominican can come, and you may have had that land and may have purchased it, and it may have been in your family for generations.
Right.
Going far beyond the 1929 date that was passed by the Dominican High Court, the Parliament, in the Parliament. They're not allowed to do that. Right now, and I would go back to the intro, I would say that it's beyond just a civil rights crisis. It's actually a human rights crisis.
A human rights crisis.
It's a human rights crisis because we're talking about not only is property being taken, not only are people being harassed, but actually being killed. People are being killed, they're being raped, they're being denied their basic human rights across the country, simply by virtue of the fact that they happen to be Dominicans of Haitian descent.
So Black Dominicans.
Right, Black Dominicans. And we're not so much talking about the immigrants or the migrant workers. We're talking specifically, and this is what this decision targeted. It targeted individuals who were born in the Dominican Republic, but who happen to be of Haitian descent. So it's really Dominicans that they're targeting, but are of Haitian descent. And so that I think is really a human rights issue, because when you're talking about generations of families having been in Dominican Republic and are now, their properties are being taken away, and some of them are being killed outright, for no reason other than the fact that they happen to be of Haitian descent. It forces you to think about what was happening in South Africa. It forces us to think about the Jim Crow laws here in the U.S.
So it's human rights tiered with or married with discrimination?
Absolutely.
Can you speak to 1929? What about the benchmark or the cutoff point of 1929? What does that have to do with this?
Well, the decision that was made by the Dominican Parliament
recently,
in the Supreme Court, and that decision was made in September of 2013.
Right.
They decided that they would target and identify individuals going back to 1929 who had been born in the Dominican Republic. So now, if they're still alive, that would make them about 85 years old.
Who had been born in the Dominican Republic, but who were of Haitian descent.
Yes.
Right, so you're talking about a large percentage of this population in the Dominican Republic, in that region where they settle down. I mean, we have to be very careful because we're talking about those that are by the border, those that have been migrant workers in the sugarcane industry versus the one that live in the capital, that are from another strata, if you want, a social strata. There's students, we have students that go to school, you have businessmen, you have other people that retire, that leave the United States or that even leave Haiti to go live to Dominican Republic. So we're talking about the people that have been, the one that we're targeting out are the people that have been totally discriminated against and that do not have enough structure, they don't have enough power to fight.
And that is the group of migrant workers, or is that the group of the higher strata?
Of migrant workers.
Okay, migrant workers.
Right. See, the essence of this is one, if you allow individuals who are born in the country to have civil rights, human rights, who are able to own property, have the right to vote, own a vehicle, get an education, live their lives, then they become full-fledged members of that community.
Right.
They become
They
full-fledged
are
members.
enculturated at
Yes.
that point. Right.
And
You speak the language, you eat the food.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They were born there. And what I would like to offer is that they target and beat up and killed the migrant workers. But this particular law is not about the migrant workers.
Who's it about?
It's about their children.
Right.
Because it's targeting individuals who were born in the Dominican Republic. Now, that number we're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood, it's been estimated between 220 to 250,000 individuals.
Wow.
And so the High Court has decided that they're going to target, identify, and deport those individuals. Now,
how would you do that? If you deport them, where would they go? Do they speak the language? Do they know the culture of Haiti?
I think your question would be deport where?
Yeah.
What
Because if
they've done.
There should be, this would be so ideal to have a lawyer answer the question about the right of the soil versus the right of your heritage.
Right.
Well, but see, before we get to that,
this will be interesting because they were born on that land.
Right.
Right.
And should that, and then now they're being denied all the rights that you just mentioned, health right, education,
human
right to vote, human rights. So where does that leave them?
Yeah. Are they?
That's what makes it a humanitarian crisis, because as far as the Dominican government is concerned, by virtue of the fact that these individuals are of Haitian descent, they deport them to Haiti.
Right.
And they recently did
I mean,
with
using that as the benchmark.
Yeah, exactly.
Using that as the benchmark, we could all be deported to Africa.
Yes. Yeah. And then,
politics-wise and the geopolitics will be a little bit difficult because Africa is far away from Santo Domingo.
Well, no, yes, but what I would offer, though, is that we have to be very careful with that because we could all be deported.
Absolutely, because everyone has,
be deported to Africa. So, but what we're looking at is that number of 220 to 250,000 individuals who are born in
presently living in the DR, who are Dominican by birth.
The far larger number, if we're talking about migrant workers, it's been guesstimated at a combination of migrant workers and these the children of the migrant workers that were born in DR. That far larger number is somewhere around 1.2 million individuals.
Amazing.
But they're not concerned. They're not concerned about the migrant workers because they have set up sufficient political systematic roadblocks to keep them from gaining empowerment.
Right.
So it is their children that they want to make sure that they deny.
Because they would be educated and et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
So
that's where the politics
let me just
comes in.
jump in here for just a moment. Elsy, you're from EMG. Before we forget, you're from EMG Health Communications, and you're a health communicator. And what is a health advocate? Absolutely. And what's next? What's the next step for EMG Health Communications? You have something coming up?
Oh, of course. We usually commemorate the International Women's Month in March.
Right.
And for the past 13 years we've been doing that. So this March will be our 14th annual commemoration of the International Women's Month, and we're going to have a very interesting lady coming from Hispaniola, and that will be from Haiti, not Santo Domingo. And she's a soprano.
Right.
Her name is Nicole St. Victor. She is a music teacher, and she happened to have been very close to dying 4 years ago during the earthquake. She was at the Philharmonic School of St. Trinity when the earthquake struck.
In 2008, yeah.
And she even saw some of her students going away and dying. She barely missed going down with them. So she had secured a place where she continues teaching music and songs and instruments, and she's a jewel. She's a jewel.
So she's coming to the United States
She's coming to the United
in March.
States. We'll have that on our Facebook pretty soon, and the location and the time and the date.
So we can check EMG Health Communications on Facebook to find out more information about the soprano. And Joe Marthone, what's next for you?
Well, what's next for me is that we're moving forward full throttle for this year's election for the U.S. congressional seat.
Right. When is that again? The election
The election is in June. It'll
June
be
of
June
2014.
24th. Yeah,
Okay.
June 24th, Tuesday, June 24th. And we start petitioning, we start collecting signatures on March 4th. So we're building bridges, building alliances, recruiting volunteers, and raising money. So if anyone's interested, we welcome all of that with our efforts to really, really give the community and the district a voice.
What's your website?
My website is Marthone for Congress, and Marthone is spelled M-A-R-T-H-O-N-E, F-O-R, Congress, C-O-N-G-R-E-S-S.
Okay, so not the number 4, spell it out.
Yeah,
and you're on
F-O-R.
Facebook?
Yes, I'm on Facebook, Joseph Marthone. I'm on Twitter. Wow,
You're
Instagram.
Okay, wow.
And,
hopefully we'll see some pictures of you here.
Yes, yes. We look forward to that. And really, it's about empowering the community and giving us a chance, because surely we deserve better when we start looking at the quality of education that our children have been denied. When we look at health care, we look at the various issues in terms of affordable housing and so forth. So we're looking to make a difference.
And Elsy, we can find more information about EMG Health Communications on Facebook. And what's your website?
The website is www.emghealth.org.
Great.
The announcement will be made shortly.
Great.
And we hope everybody will be interested to attend.
This has been huge. Thanks for joining me, guys, here on Communication Corner. And thank you for joining us on Communication Corner for this very lively discussion on Haiti / the Dominican Republic and citizenship. We'll see how this turns out. Tune in. We'll do another show or two about this and see what happens in the DR and Haiti. My name's Gail Lewis. Thanks so much for joining me on Communication Corner. Check out my blog, idon'thaveissues.com. Email me newday2010@yahoo.com. And of course, watch more of this show. Thanks for joining me here on Communication Corner. For everybody here at QPTV, thanks and have a great evening. Good night.